Good afternoon, 49er faithful. Welcome to another episode of the Hammerhead Show. You know it. You love it. I'm your host, Rob Schuh. Always happy to be here with my co-host, Jack Hammer, representing the Press Democrat there in Santa Rosa, writing killer articles for the blog, the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. Jack, how are you doing this afternoon, my friend?
I'm great. Friday, game's coming up in a couple of days. It's time to go.
It's time to go. It's time to wipe that performance in Chicago off the map, Jack. I'm tired of all of the question marks surrounding this talented team. I'm tired of the naysayers. I'm tired of the doubt. And I want a chance to prove that this team is who I thought they were. And I'm hoping that they can do it on Sunday against Seattle at Levi Stadium. One of the important pieces of information before we recognize those people that are here in the chat, we'll just kick this right off with a piece of good news. Who was back at practice today that everybody's been worried about, Jack?
That would be George Kittle. He was back at practice today.
George Kittle back at practice. Now, do you believe that that was a pretty significant loss for the 49ers in week one, not having George Kittle out there in that monsoon game?
I think every time that Kittle's not on the field, there's a loss to it. As far as the significance, they ran the ball pretty well, but maybe with him out there at tight end, the pass doesn't get over the tight end's head from Trey Lance. So, hopefully he's able to go and play the whole game on Sunday.
That one is very exciting to me. I had the same thought when it was Tyler Kroft missing that by just a couple of yards. Were it George Kittle out there with his wheels, most likely that would have been a completion. And just that one play could have changed the shape of the game, let alone what George Kittle might have done in the blocking game. I have to anticipate that with Seattle on the calendar, the first division game for the 49ers, George Kittle was eyeing this week to be ready. Do you think it comes with considerable risk, taking into account that it is one of those muscle pull type of injuries that can be re-aggravated if you go too soon?
Well, there's always some kind of a risk when you're coming back, and if they're coming back a little early, that that only adds to the risk. So hopefully the 49ers will play this smart. I would think that their training staff understands the situation and that they're not going to push on somebody to go if they're not quite ready to go. And I don't think the 49ers want to have him be dealing with this for the next 15 weeks.
Right. That's the risk of going back out there too soon, is re-aggravating, and it becomes an even longer recovery period than it was initially. Kyle Shanahan did talk about that the 49ers are well aware, and their coaching training staffs are well aware of George Kittle and his propensity to say, I'm ready to go, put me in, and that they will intentionally hold him back so that he's not harming himself in wanting to be out there for the team, because it is better for the team to have him out there the rest of the season, even if he ends up having to miss the game on Sunday. But I'm hopeful that he won't. I want to take a moment to recognize those that are here in the chat. The Gay Bubba Niners Show, Spy Nick Danger coming in, always doing the good deed of asking and imploring and commanding others to hit the like button. When it's all caps, that's a commandment, Jack. That's just like, hey, man, hit the like button. We got Gold-Blooded in the house, the notorious GAV, who I learned today that he's prohibited after a wager with a Chicago Bears fan. He's actually prohibited from posting Kyle Juszczyk material for the next year. Gav, that's a tremendous loss for Kyle Juszczyk. I just want to throw that out there, and a loss for 49ers Twitter. So that was a hell of a wager to lose. I don't fault you for making it, but man, we got to suffer through it now. Alan Elizer coming in to say, Rob Schuh, Jack Hammer, happy Friday evening. Hello, faithful. On to Seattle. Jack, how do you think we'll fare against Seattle on Sunday? We're going to get into that topic. Don't you worry about it. And we were a couple minutes late starting, and Archie and Cheese were like, it's unacceptable. That lateness, Rob, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. John B., Sneakerhead on the channel. Rob and Faithful, happy Friday. Let's get this dub and win by double digits just because of that video. We're going to be talking about that video in just a second. We got CJ Gray. We got GOAT. Yes, indeed. Kittle will play. Lapaka Lolo back in for the regular season. Peter Lee. That is it in its entirety. Got everybody in there. Got it started. Got it kicked off. All right, we've got our injury update. Daniel Brunskill being the other name that is on the injury list, out for Sunday. I don't know that that's a big one in my view. However, if you have an injury along the offensive line, it becomes a far bigger deal. I would still view Daniel Brunskill as the primary backup at most positions. Would you agree with that?
I would. I think so. I think, that he would be their sixth man, so to speak. And so not having him there hurts from that standpoint. It doesn't hurt their starting group, but if there's any injuries, definitely could be an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Could be an issue. By the way, just getting to Archie's comment here. It says, Rob, looks like we missed your conversation. YouTube just started. Apologies for that if YouTube did lag on the upload. But hey, you're here now. You can smash the like button now, and we will continue. All you missed was a quick injury update and me saying what's up to all the sneakerheads and the people here in the chat, like Moses, who came in to tell us Happy Mexican Independence Day. Happy Mexican Independence Day to you as well, Moses. Okay, so we're going to get into the Trey Lance topic. The only other injury update I did want to provide was a question I had for Jack, which was about Samuel Womack. We did see a little bit of him coming off of the field, going into the training room. It turned out to be he's not on the injury list. That's all I need to hear. Could have been something, but if you don't make the list, doesn't feel relevant to me. Let's talk a little bit about Trey Lance, Jack. You got Colin Cowherd, his latest reaction to Trey at the club. Everyone on 49ers Twitter has an opinion about this and whether it's a distraction. I think it is important to note whether it was in between weeks 1 and 2, as some people imply, versus it being in the offseason and just being released at a particular point in time. But this takes us back to 2018 when Jimmy Garoppolo did have himself a date that ended up being a conversation starter as well. Kyle Shanahan, in response to that, said, I've never in my life commented on a player's date in July, so I'm not going to start today. I don't think it really pertains or matters to us. I would argue that's the case with Trey as well. But Jack, what's your take on this situation?
I just want to ask everybody where the 100 mil is. Where the 100 mil is. I think it's not a big deal. Just like I didn't think it was a big deal back with the whole Mac Jones thing. And
right.
It's quite interesting to me how different this is being perceived by the 49ers fan base, because they were all over crushing one guy and the other guy, they're like, no big deal. I mean, come on, but that's just the way it is. It's not a big deal.
Not a big deal to me either. I mean, this is a situation that, sure, is it a little bit of a distraction at this point in time? It is, in that people are going to be asking questions about it. People are going to have opinions about it, and it will make for news. However, I think, again, that has more to do with the timing of the release of this tape as opposed to when it actually may have taken place. And, I try to stay away from sticky situations and commenting on things where there are parties who have been injured in some way. And so the only thing I will say about this particular situation, both of these situations, Jimmy's back then, hell, if you want to bring in Mac Jones to it, and Lance's here, is that these involve purely consensual adults, right? This is not a situation where any party was injured. And just because in America we have these overly puritanical views towards sex, this becomes a topic of conversation when it really shouldn't be. Consenting adults should be able to do what they want in their own private lives without a significant amount of scrutiny, even if you are the face of an NFL franchise. And I think you can have your own belief about strip clubs, strippers, people who attend strip clubs, but really it's up to each individual to decide those things for themselves in a free society. And I hope we continue to live in a free society here in the United States. So I'm with you. I don't think it's a big deal. I think if you had cameras on all NFL players and all young men, it would be something that came up rather frequently with young men in their early 20s, right? It is, there's a reason. Hell, Portland has the most strip clubs per capita in the United States. I don't attend them frequently, but they are here. And so I just want to point that out, to each their own is Rob Schuh's stance on this. You don't have to touch that with a 10-foot pole if you don't want to, Jack.
No, I like I said earlier, I just don't think it's a big deal. It is what it is. I already mentioned what I said was I just think it's funny to watch the difference in the way that the two situations have been received by 49er fans, but that's the way most fans are with everything. You can even go back to a lot of other topics, such as Twitter with Nick Bosa back in 2019 before he was drafted. So we'll just leave that there.
We will leave that there, put a pin in it. I am tempted to respond to a comment in the chat. Pete, let me just say it wouldn't matter if it was. Let me just say that. Speaking to Pete there with that one. Let's move on, Jack. Let's get to football. Building off the Bears into a section of comments I'm much more comfortable with. I don't have to blush through this one, I hope, Jack. So here's my first question for you. Coming out of the game against Chicago, obviously a disappointing loss, obviously many factors that went into it, weather being one of those factors, not necessarily the contributing factor. I believe it's a medley of reasons why the 49ers lost there. But when you look back at that game, are there legitimate concerns about this team based on that week 1 performance? Is there anything coming out of that game that you're concerned about going into week 2?
The biggest concern is the lack of discipline that they showed, really. Because beyond that, I felt like for the most part, they played a very good game on defense, like, other than a couple of undisciplined things with penalties. And then also a couple of undisciplined pieces as far as breakdowns in the secondary. But beyond that, I thought that they played okay. Trey Lance needs to improve, and the defense on the secondary and the back end needs to improve a little bit as well.
When you think about those breakdowns in the secondary, do you attribute that, at least in part, to the loss of Jimmy Ward not being out there? What type of a game did you see from Tayshaun Gibson?
I put it more on just the pressure that Justin Fields puts on a defense with his ability to run. I think that was a bigger impact than Jimmy Ward not being out there, because they held their own for the first half. It was the second half you saw, the breakdown on the one touchdown, and the second one was multiple guys missing it. It wasn't just a safety out of position.
The first touchdown to Dante Pettis, you heard Talanoa Hufanga accepting blame for that, which I think a great safety does. Anything that gets beyond the safety is my responsibility, was sort of his response there. But it did appear as both he and Dre Greenlaw crashed towards Justin Fields, allowing for Dante Pettis to be open. Did you have a sense of where the blown assignment was on that play, or was it just the defense in its entirety collapsing because of the stress Justin Fields and his wheels put on them?
I think it's on both of those two, on both Hufanga and on Greenlaw. I don't know which one exactly, but you definitely see both of them keeping their eyes on the quarterback. You see them both moving in the direction of the QB. Somebody's got to find. It's hard because you don't have eyes in the back of your head, so it's hard to know that guy's back there, because normally in that situation, that receiver would be coming across the field and running right at you. It was a good job by Pettis to just hold still and wait for the quarterback to find him.
When you look at those mistakes that felt fixable coming out of week 1, what do you see the 49ers being able to do to quickly correct some of those things that they will drag with them from week 1 into Levi Stadium when they take on the Seattle Seahawks? Yeah,
you just need to be smarter, on the defensive side when you get to the quarterback, you just, you got to play that a little bit smarter. I think that's the big one. And then, like Dre Greenlaw's was, I think, just, you don't have to be quite, you want to get to the ball, but at the same time, you need to be smart with rallying to the ball as well. If you see that your teammates have them, you don't necessarily need to, you can get over there and help out, but you don't have to be grabbing around the face and that kind of stuff. So the mistakes from the penalties, I think, are easily correctable. We'll find out as they move on to week 2 here. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I think we'll see what happens when it comes to Lance with his throwing, and what happens in the run game without Elijah Mitchell, and how they can respond with that.
We're definitely going to dig deeper into the running back room. That's absolutely a topic that I want to hit there. When you look at the 49ers defense, in particular, a player like Dre Greenlaw, who struggled throughout the contest and had several mistakes that allowed drives to continue for Chicago, do you think that is an instance where Dre Greenlaw is really attempting to play with aggression, and he just goes a bit beyond that, and that aggression turns against him in allowing some of those penalties where it didn't need to happen? The face mask, right? The gentleman is already wrapped up when that face mask is happening. You get the still shot of him being tackled by 2-3 other Niners, and there's Dre Greenlaw with a hand on the face mask. It just becomes a problem. It's not really assisting at that point. Is that overly aggressive, trying to do too much?
Yeah, it's a little bit. You want your guys to be aggressive. You want your guys to all get to the football. That's what you teach. You just got to be a little bit smarter once you get there.
That makes sense. Samuel coming in with the question, Rob, do you think our defense lacked discipline or were they complacent? I did get a little bit of a sense in the second half that the defense thought they really had Chicago against the ropes and just failed to make that knockout punch. There was a lack of discipline on a couple of plays, but I did expect that to happen with Justin Fields because of his ability to turn it into a schoolyard play when things break down. So I thought it was a combination on just a few plays with a lack of discipline. And in the second half, quite honestly, just a little bit of complacency and believing that we had them up against the ropes. What was your observation in the change in the second half, Jack?
The change in the second half came, I think, started at the end of the first half. Justin Fields just started moving around. Right around the end, that last drive possession for the Bears, he started to use his legs a lot more. They started getting him out on the edge with bootlegs and things like that. They put him in field goal position. They would have tried a field goal, except for the punter bringing out the towel and
Right.
that unsportsmanlike conduct pushing him out of field goal range. But you saw it starting then, and it carried over. So I don't think that I don't think they were complacent. I think it was a lack of discipline issue. It was, the penalties help extending drives, but also the discipline can be things like, not fulfilling your responsibility. So if you're Eric Armstead and your job is to contain Justin Fields, you need to make sure that he doesn't get outside of you to bust it, and then lead to the busted coverage behind you, or the defensive end on the other side who allowed Fields to get outside of him, and that leads to a holding penalty on Charvarius Ward. So all those things kind of play together.
They do come together. It's why it's so important to talk about these games with a little bit of nuance and not attempt to lay the blame on any one individual or any one position group, unless it's very clear that was the breakdown. Just going through overall impressions, a high-level breakdown of a couple of specific positions and position groups. What was your overall impression of Trey Lance? Good, bad, indifferent?
The first two, good and bad. There were good plays and there were bad plays. He made some really good throws. He made some bad throws. Just needs to be a little bit more consistent with a lot of things, and that's going to come. You would expect that to come at least. I can't say for sure it's going to come, but you would expect it to come the more that he plays. It was start three. Started off good. I think that the Bears took some things away, made it a little bit tougher for them in the second half, and he struggled. And then the rain came, and at that point, whatever.
Right. It gets ugly. Then I threw up my first short on the channel, Jack. I threw up a 10-second clip of a waterfall in the stands, 37,000 views. Just throw it out there, and it goes off, right? So people wanted to see the deluge of water that was out there. 2 follow-up questions for you. Was it about what you expected coming into this game, ups and downs for Trey Lance? And did anything about his performance fundamentally change what you believe to be true about his career trajectory and his chances this season?
What we saw on Sunday was about what I was expecting. It's been what we saw, what I've seen of him throughout the training camp practices I was at. I only missed a few of them, other than the ones out in Minnesota. He looked very much to be that same player, but he made some really good stuff. And then in terms of, a career trajectory, that's going to depend on kind of where he goes from here, right? Is he going to be able to be a little more consistent in the pocket with the way that he moves around in there? Because that's one of the things I think that caused him to miss a couple of throws. He just needs to move a little bit better in there, and then, hit the open throws when they present themselves, and also just throw the ball when it's there. You just got to let it rip. You see a guy open, let it rip. And that's what happened on the sack in the red zone. That wasn't on the offensive line. That was on Trey Lance not letting it rip to Juwan Jennings in the left side. So he just needs to, there's definitely room to grow, and we'll see what happens here this week.
Yeah, and in linking what you just said there to what Jesus is putting in here on the Super Chat, I do think it is fair to wonder, in those instances where Lance hits his back foot, there is something available. He chooses not to take it and hitches again or moves within the pocket, whatever play we're referring to there. It is fair to say that in those instances, is it possible Jimmy Garoppolo would have hit that throw? Sure, absolutely. I have a problem with trying to go back and answer these types of questions because so many factors change. If you were to replace one quarterback, it would change the entirety of the game. So it becomes impossible to predict. But Jesus coming in with this super chat, and we will honor it because it's a super chat. It says, Rob, Flav said that Trey Lance peed his pants in the last 5 minutes of the game and couldn't deliver, and that Jimmy would have. What are your thoughts? Number one, I did not get the impression that Trey peed his pants. I'm not here for that type of insulting of someone who goes out there and runs with the ferocity that Trey Lance does. You're talking about a dude who ran straight into defensive linemen, linebackers, you name it, pushing forward for yardage. So did he pee his pants out there at all? No. I'd say he ran over some people at times and enforced his will. Was he perfect? Far from it. As Jack alluded to earlier, I am in agreement. Ups and downs throughout that performance. And I would argue that if you go back and watch the last 5 minutes of the game, that's not pee. That's rain. That's rain coming down from the heavens. It was insane the last 5 minutes. It would be like trying to throw a rock, not a football, because it was sopping wet at that point. The video I put out with 37,000 views, that was happening during the last 5 minutes. Flash flooded the entire frickin' stadium at that moment. But Jack, if you do have an opinion on whether Jimmy would have made a difference, happy to turn that over to you, sir.
I think it's really hard to say that Garoppolo would have made a difference in this game. And the reason I say that is because, I tweeted it out right after the play occurred, right? You have the deep ball that he misses to Croft. Well, that throw wasn't a whole lot different than what we saw Jimmy Garoppolo miss in week 17 or 16 out in Tennessee, right? When he has Kyle Juszczyk wide open on the right side, he overthrows him. So it's not like we haven't seen Jimmy Garoppolo miss that throw. It's not like we've haven't seen Jimmy Garoppolo struggle in the rain, in Washington, where they won the game, but he had a couple of picks and they only scored 9 points. Or, last year in the rain in Levi's against the Colts, where they only get 18. And, in the second half, he wasn't good as the rain got worse. And, just happens that that performance against the Colts was against the same guy. The defensive coordinator for the Colts that day was the guy that was the head coach for the Bears on Sunday. I don't buy this at all. Garoppolo if this game was completely sunny and Lance was throwing the ball over the yard and it was, there were some other things that happened, I would maybe give you that. But no, he's not. Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't going to bring him back on Sunday.
I like that perspective on it. I also have to say I'm not a huge person when it comes to labeling others or especially labels. It can be a little bit derogative, but I'm just going to leave that there and acknowledge that, like, maybe a little bit of truth to it, maybe a little bit.
Well, Flav's a big Jimmy guy.
Yes, which then could lead to a little bit of that polarization of hating on Trey a little bit. And
yeah, hey, I don't see this as a topic later, so I'll just bring it up right now because I know it's supposed to rain on Sunday in Santa Clara for the game. It is, and it rained out there. I don't think it's actually rain that the 49ers have been dealing with. I think what the 49ers have been dealing with last week in Chicago and might be dealing with this Sunday at Levi's, it's actually not rain. It's the tears of the Jimmy Garoppolo fans because he's not playing.
Jack, that's money. The tears of Jimmy stands coming down. Nothing against being a fan of Jimmy Garoppolo, and I just used a term that I'm not a big fan of in Jimmy Stan. Hey, root for who you want to root for, that's for sure. But Jack, I got to give it to you on that joke front because that's pretty money right there. John B saying, Rob, JT O'Sullivan was on a podcast today and said Trey has the best chance for the 49ers to win a Super Bowl over Jimmy Garoppolo. I think that's an interesting observation. I've yet to watch that tape. Absolutely am going to. Want to see what JT O'Sullivan had to say on Last Second Sports today. Jesse Naylor doing a great job of bringing in a quality guest with a lot of great insight to offer. I can get behind this in the idea that I believe there will be a maturation process for Trey Lance, that he will continue to build on this season. And by the time we get to the playoffs, he may have built up his skill set enough, become comfortable enough in the offense to offer a greater chance to win a Super Bowl than Jimmy Garoppolo. But I have a hard time saying right now in this very moment in time, it wouldn't be a little bit easier for Jimmy G to come in and operate this offense because of the experience. But I think it is that upside that the Niners are going for, right? That's what they're chasing.
That's the only reason why they're making this move is because they're thinking that the upside with Lance is going to be better than what it was with Garoppolo. And, they've been to a Super Bowl and lost, and they were trying, they had a chance in 2021 and they took it. Because really what it was, if Garoppolo was early on in his contract, they might not make this, but they saw the writing on the wall. They didn't want to re-up Garoppolo in a couple of years. Hey, we got a really good quarterback class. We really like this guy, so let's go get him right now, and we can have him sit for a year and learn, and then we can get him to take over. You can just see it's all from a football standpoint. It made a lot of sense what they did.
It absolutely did. All right, let's get back into breaking down the Bears game, wrap that up, and get on to Seattle. So just, again, some of your high-level observations here on the defense. Which level of the defense were you most impressed by on Sunday? Between the defensive line, the linebackers, who I think took most of the brunt when it came to the penalties that kept Chicago on the field, or the secondary that certainly played a role in some of the defensive breakdowns. Which were you most impressed by of the three units?
I was most impressed by Talon Hufanga, really, to be honest with you. I mean, that guy was
balling.
Yeah, he was all over the field making plays. And then, the start of the game, the defensive line came out looking like what you expected. And then I think they kind of continued to do the same thing, and Justin Fields just started making plays on them.
So it wasn't a deterioration in the pass rush. It was a response from Fields in the second half that you thought contributed more to his ability to extend those plays?
Yeah, he was just starting to take advantage of them with his legs, and he's just so mobile. And then you get, the conditions out there make it even harder for a defender to stop and grab him. I just think all those things kind of play together, and that's why it got away from him.
Yes, that makes sense. Going back to the offense, the offensive line was a huge concern coming into this, and depending on who you ask, could have been a concern coming out of Chicago. What was your high-level take on the offensive line, how they performed, and what led to some of the pressures or the ability for Trey to elude pressure?
I thought the 49ers offensive line played way better than people are giving credit are saying. There were a couple times where they broke down, but not that often. For the most part, they played pretty good. Some of the pressure, watch an NFL game. There's not very many times when the quarterback draws back and they just have a pocket that's wraps around them and they don't have to move. Heck, I was watching the game last night and Patrick Mahomes was moving around almost every time he dropped back for, at least in the little bit of the game that I was able to catch. I just the quarterback has to be able to move around in the pocket and make plays. And Lance moved around and he helped them out at times last night or on Sunday. There were a couple times where he moved a little bit too much and put himself in bad situations. So it's just, again, it's about getting reps and doing it. And we'll see how he grows.
So is it fair to say, Jack, from that summation there, that the reps are important, not just for the congealing of the offensive line itself, but how they move in collaboration with Lance within the pocket, that they will get used to each other in that sense. It's not just the front five, it's how the front five interact with Lance moving in the pocket.
Well, it's more so Lance just being able to move around because, like, for example, on the incompletion to Jawan Jennings on third down, it was early in the game. He hits his back foot and he's got Aaron Banks running the defensive tackle through the pocket like he's taught. And so he needs to just slide to the left. And if he wants to step up, he can step up. But what happens on that play is when he goes to move, which is what he has to do, he just does it too quick. And he puts himself in a bad situation. When he moves, he also, he goes from here. When he moves, he gets himself to here, and then he needs to bring himself back to here. So that's why the ball's late, right? Later on in the game, you see it's the third down completion to Ross Dwelly. You see him hit his back foot. He's here. And when he moves in the pocket, he's still here. So that all he has to do is turn and throw. And so that's what he needs to get. You saw the 49ers, at least I saw him on Wednesday. If you look at my channel, you'll see it. They actually worked on that on Wednesday at practice with him avoiding the rushers. They had the quarterback, the coaches were actually rushing up in the middle or around the end and stuff like that to make them move and get them to stay in their throwing position.
It's so interesting. This topic came up last night in talking about Justin Herbert and the small tweaks he was making to his throwing motion, that these high-level athletes are doing such small things, to your point, in making sure that you stay sort of cocked and ready to go as opposed to coming forward and then have to reload. That extra split second being the difference. Justin Herbert, similarly, they were explaining that he found himself with tilted shoulders when he got to the back of his drop, and he worked to level those out so that he didn't then have to drop his shoulder in his throwing motion. It was already where it needed to be to continue that throwing motion. So fascinating to watch that from Lance and see the small things that he will need to work on as he continues to get better in the pocket. I have a question about one of our running backs that will transition us into the Seattle game. But shocker, the notorious GAV has a question about a different running back. I mean, if you can guess it, I'll be amazed. Gav coming in to say, Rob, do you and Jack think this is going to be another year we underutilize Juice? If there's anything to be gained from the game in Chicago, it does seem that, man, we are going to fail to use Juice to his fullest potential. And maybe that's because Juice is such a quality player that you're almost bound to not give him the touches that he deserves. But I will say that I think we're in for another season where Juice is not utilized to the extent that he could be.
I don't understand what's going on here, because I think he should be a bigger part of this offense. He should be I'm not necessarily your third down back. I think Jeff Wilson Jr. can do a good job of that. But Kyle Juszczyk needs to be getting the ball thrown to him more often than, I think he only got one target in the fourth quarter when it was a torrential downpour. But he needs to see the ball. He should be your backup tight end. He should be utilized in that way. It seemed to me in that game they used Juwan Jennings quite a bit as that second tight end. Because they ran a lot of 11 personnel, and when they do that, he's usually the guy that's the closest to the line of scrimmage. He's the guy that missed the block on the edge, down in the red zone on the opening possession of the second half on the run to the left. So, but I want to answer your question, Gav. Kyle Juszczyk needs to be a bigger part of the offense, I believe.
All right, got another one that I want to bring in here from Quesadilla Thrilla 71. Sneakerhead here on the channel says, Jack, I know you respect other people and their opinions, but when they knock on Trey, isn't that really unfair, and does it bother you?
Here's my thing when it comes to Lance, right? Is I'm gonna tell you all the good things. I'm gonna tell you try to give you the positives and the negatives of his game. And I know some people only latch on to one side or the other. What I'm gonna say, the thing here is, when you hear somebody that tells you that they know that Trey Lance is going to be great, you need to question what they're saying. You need to question it. And it's the same thing when they're the guys that are ripping and they're saying that Trey Lance peed his pants. You got to question what they're saying, because nobody knows where this guy is going to go. And the negativity or the knocks on Trey on some of the stuff, there's some validity to some of it. Some guys are going beyond what it is on both sides of the coin here. So, we're 3 games into Trey Lance's starting career. Where he's going to turn out, we don't know. There's going to be ups and downs. So you need to be willing to hear the downs while you also hear the ups. And I think that's my biggest takeaway on this.
Well said, Jack. All right, we are clearing into the Seattle game, and the way in which I want to tee that up is asking about one last performance in Chicago. High level, how did you feel about Jeff Wilson Jr.? Obviously did not have a spectacular yard per carry average. Was his game stronger than that, or was it a lackluster effort from Jeff Wilson Jr.?
I thought he had I thought that Wilson struggled. There were some runs to be had that he missed. Some of it could be the conditions and things like that. So I just, I think he'll be better week 2 here, now that he's got some reps in him, and the track should be faster and easier to cut on in Santa Clara.
And overall, of the 4 backs that could be active on Sunday, between Jeff Wilson Jr., Jordan Mason, Ty Davis-Price, and Marlon Mack, what is your breakdown of the 4, and who do you believe is going to be active on Sunday? Just high level as far as your impression of those 4 backs.
Yeah, I would expect to see Jeff Wilson Jr. start, and then I would expect to see Marlon Mack active.
Interesting.
I don't know if I'm Marlon Mack, do I sign with the 49ers thinking that I'm not going to get a shot? And we've seen the 49ers do this in the past. One of the things that Kyle Shanahan said earlier this week, on Monday, I believe it was the young guys need to get better at the stuff when they don't have the ball in their hands. So we're talking pass protection. He clarified that on Wednesday about, just lining up in the right spot, running the routes, catching the ball, those different things. And I think Marlon Mack, as a vet, can do all that stuff right now. So he'd be one of your backs out there. And then I think the third one's going to be either Jordan Mason or Ty Davis-Price. And I would lean towards Jordan Mason, because this offense needs some explosiveness out of the backfield from somebody not named Deebo Samuel.
You got to have that explosive nature coming out of the backfield. Bro Montana coming in with some explosive comments here. What's up, my fellow Niner clan? Glad I can catch the chat. Keep up the great work, Rob. I suppose nothing totally explosive about Bro Montana's comments there, but you had to get it in, had to work it in, and that was the transition statement that I decided on, Jack. And sometimes you commit to it, and it's too late, so you just have to sell the energy on it. All right, so if you're deciding, if you are the 49ers, and you've said Marlon Mack is going to be active, I find that choice to be an interesting one, just how short he's been with the club. I'll be fascinated if he is elevated above one of the young players. Again, given the time he's had to pick up the pass protection schemes and things like that, I'd be a little more apt to see him a little more. I would predict that he'll be out maybe next week as opposed to this. But I don't put it past the 49ers to elevate him. They have done that in the past, bringing someone in off of the street. And certainly if Marlon Mack brings in a particular skill set with him that's above and beyond what one of the rookies can do, you can put him in situations to be successful. Certainly Kyle Shanahan understands how to do that. When you are deciding, if it plays out, as you say, Marlon Mack is one of the three. If you're deciding between Jordan Mason and Ty Davis Price, what are the deciding factors that you're using there? What are the strengths of each that you're leaning on to say, hey, we either need more of this or more of this on Sunday against Seattle?
Well, Kyle Shanahan has said, it really comes down to when you're looking at that third running back, who can give you the best look on special teams. And so that's why Mason won out for week one. So I kind of feel that's going to be the same case this week. And the other part there is that Mason is just so explosive, and I think he's a better running back than Ty Davis Price.
Right. Casey Dilla Thrillo wants to know, how disappointing was it to not see Jordan Mason last week? Thank you. I am surprised that we didn't get any carries for Jordan Mason, potentially rookie plus wet weather. Kyle Shanahan said, no, I just can't trust that he's going to hang on to the ball. That's the only logical explanation I can come up with the way in which Jeff Wilson Jr. was not getting traction out there. What was your impression of 0 carries for Jordan Mason with the way in which that played out last Sunday?
Yeah, it's pretty clear that Deebo Samuel is a running back,
right,
for the 49ers, right? I mean, they used him as a running back. The way he got, I don't know if he had a pass thrown to him other than a screen. He did. He had one that he dropped in the rain late in the game. But, for the most part, they utilize him as their second running back, and played out that way on Sunday. And I think it'll be that way moving forward.
Yeah, gonna have to lean on Deebo, no doubt about it. Last question on the running backs. Do you think it's going to be Jeff Wilson Jr. or one back getting the vast majority of the touches, or will we see a pretty even breakdown amongst several of the backs, including Deebo Samuel being used as such?
Well, they usually just stick with one guy as their main guy, right? They don't. It's not like there's a lot of rotation in there. They usually know this is my guy in these situations, and so I think it's that's a tough one because I think it is game plan specific and who they want to use in certain personnel groupings. But I would expect to see a lot of Jeff Wilson Jr. carrying the ball, and if he struggles, then that's where you'll see the other guys coming in.
Absolutely.
A lot of Jeff Wilson Jr., a lot of Deebo.
Yeah, I tend to think Jeff Wilson Jr. as well. That's who I'm leaning on in my fantasy football matchups where I had to scramble to get myself a running back. I went heavy on Jeff Wilson Jr. because I do think he's going to have a chance to get himself a couple of 100-yard games coming up. And I think the first one is here against Seattle. Let's talk about a few of the key matchups happening against Seattle. Want to bring in a question from Lawless Light that coincides with the first key matchup, which to me is Lance versus the Seattle defense. And I like the angle that Lawless is taking here. It says, Rob, Jack, what's the best asset that Seattle has on defense at this point in time? Jack, what would you say? And Lance coming up against this Seattle defense that was able to get some takeaways, keep Denver out of the end zone when it counted. What is their greatest asset this year on what was listed as a fairly depleted roster?
They're fast, right? They're fast and they play fast, and that's always kind of been that way up in Seattle. They do some things that are difficult for offenses in terms of disguising things, but what they're doing overall is pretty straightforward and simple. And so, keep it simple, stupid, that whole thing, and it helps you play fast. And faster you play, the better you play, and that's kind of where Seattle is right now. And if you look at that game, watch out for those two outside linebackers because they combined for four quarterback hits, 4 of the 8 quarterback hits against Denver on Monday night.
Flying all over the field and throwing their bodies around. That's what I would add to that. I think that's a very succinct point made by Jack there. I also believe it was fast and physical. I saw some hits there that led me to believe, again, that I'm not so sure Seattle can keep that up 2 weeks in a row, especially on a 6-day week, as opposed to getting that extra day of rest in there. That turns out to be big. Players are always talking about shortened weeks. It was a very physical game. Felt like Seattle came out to play against their former hero. I just wonder if they can get up like that each week. When you look at the game plan more likely to be implemented by Kyle Shanahan against Seattle, do you think it's potentially going to be a very run-heavy game plan?
Yeah, I would expect. I don't think the game plan is going to be all that different than what we saw against Chicago. I think the 49ers have shown you kind of what they want to do. They want to run the ball. They want to use some, on these play action to help Trey Lance out, and they want to be explosive in the passing game. That's kind of the methodology that I thought it was going to be going into the season. That last year their running game wasn't explosive, and that's why they had to use Deebo Samuel in there, and that they were going to start to use Lance's arm to get that explosiveness. And we saw them try that on Sunday, and I think we're going to see that continue this week against Seattle. Expect about in the neighborhood of 20 to 25 throws is what they want to try to be around.
Do you anticipate, I mean, it will most likely be raining out there, but most likely not going to be raining in the way it was raining in Chicago. So we're not talking about the type of rain that prohibit you from taking shots. Would you anticipate, number one, that Danny Gray might be active in this one, and number two, that the 49ers may highlight some deep shots?
I think, the Gray thing goes back to the same thing with Ty Davis Price. It depends on what they decide to do on special teams. Turner's likely going to give them a better special teams player than Danny Gray, so I think that could be why you see it. Gray not get onto the field. It'll be interesting to see how that one plays out.
Yeah, absolutely will be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, it is a revenge game for the 49ers special teams coach, Brian Schneider. So he may want a couple of these special teams aces available for him. I got to agree with Edward Rendon coming in to say, start Danny Gray. I'm here for it. I am absolutely here for it. I will ask this one from Wango Dango. Jack, you said Wilson was looking good in camp, amazing in camp. What's with the reversal? I don't think it's a reversal. I think it's an observation of looking great in one instance, not looking good in another. But what do you see as one of the potential reasons for looking good in camp versus not looking good week one?
Well, I think the part of it in week one is the rain was a part of it. And, when you look at what he did, I thought that he did okay. The difference is he's just not as quick as Elijah Mitchell. So some of those holes he doesn't hit quite as well. There was one run on, I don't remember where it was, but I know it's a zone. He's running to the right side and he cuts, he has if he cuts a step earlier, he probably has a big gain, but he kind of double steps. And then by the time he finally starts to make his cut, he's run into the back of his offensive lineman. So it's not a clean run. It looked very much like what Elijah Mitchell did a lot last year. So, he just got to be a little bit better with that and give him, give him a week this week as the guy. And I think it'll be a little better for him.
I like Fable's simplified version, dry land. Dry land is the difference. Unfortunately, not going to be dry land on Sunday.
Well, the weather report, I know I gave a weather report earlier, but in reality, when I looked at it, it looks like it's not going to start until the second half. At least
Good.
That's the way that the weather.com thing said it should be clear until about 2:30, 3 o'clock.
So we need to step it up in the first half, and we need to do what Gabe Bubba Niners show is suggesting, says Rob Jack. You think Trey Lance will beat Seattle in the first half, 35-10, halftime lead. Niners start with the ball in the second half. Hey, if we're up 35-10, let the rain come in the second half. That's all I got to say. Start early. I'm not going to be predicting 35-10 at halftime, as much as that would absolutely please me on every level. All right, let's talk about another matchup that is key. We covered Lance versus the defense. What about the 49ers offensive line versus Seattle's pass rush? Do you believe that they will, for the most part, be able to keep Lance's jersey fairly clean against Seattle?
I think so. I think it's going to be a little bit, it's going to be tough for them, but a lot of their pressure, as I mentioned earlier, is coming off of the edges with those outside linebackers. So it's going to be on Mike McGlinchey and a lot of pressure on McGlinchey and Trent Williams to help out there. So you would think that they should be able to hold their own. Part of Seattle's pass rush looked really good on Sunday, but part of it also was because Russell Wilson was dropping back over 40 times. So that also helps you put up good numbers.
A lot of dropbacks. I'm hoping that we see a greater number of dropbacks by Geno Smith than we did by Justin Fields, thus giving us the advantage in being able to get after him. Absolutely something I'll be looking for, but we'll talk about the pass rush versus, you know what? Let's talk about that now. Pass rush versus 2 rookie tackles. Perfect transition into it. Flipping sides of the ball. The 49ers defensive line crushing down on 2 rookie tackles feels like a distinct advantage. Jack, Seattle starting a pair of rookies at those tackle spots. There's the left tackle, first rounder, Charles Cross, who was the number 9 pick out of Mississippi State. And then Abraham Lucas on the right side, a third rounder out of Washington State. Are the 49ers edge rushers going to be able to take advantage of the young players on the outside?
That's a big one, right? Because you have, like you said, you have Cross and Lucas, and that should favor Bosa and Ebukam to get there. So if Bosa and Ebukam can take advantage of that matchup like we saw early on against Chicago, it could really bode well for the 49ers here.
Absolutely. I mean, it was a case that Cross allowed 4 pressures and the 2 sacks that Denver had with edge rusher Bradley Chubb, and Lucas allowed 2 pressures. I was anticipating a much better, more successful pass rush in week 1. At the start of the game, I thought I was going to get my wish. When Javon Kinlaw came out right away and disrupted that, Samson Ebukam came in and had his first sack, which honestly I thought maybe a half a sack of that was going to go to Kinlaw coming in and cleaning that up. Bosa getting an early sack. But after that, whether it was adjustments by Chicago or Fields taking it upon himself to escape those pressures, the 49ers were not able to get home with the consistency that I believe they would. Does this set up with a less mobile quarterback and a less experienced offensive line, particularly on the edges? Does this set up to be one of those games where if the 49ers defense is going to be as elite as many have predicted, including myself, they need to be getting home on Geno Smith? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, they need to get home. That's how this defense is built, right? This defense is built for those defensive linemen to create havoc in the backfield, make the quarterback have to move around, and that helps them in the coverage on the back end. So they definitely need to cause some trouble for Geno Smith.
That would be lovely. I'm tired of the Geno Smith for Pro Bowl MVP of the league, all the things that are thrown about with his very accurate week 1. No, that's not being thrown about, except by maybe some Seahawks fans that believe they're headed to the ship this year. Well, we're going to correct them. By the way, just want to take a moment. We're nearing the last quarter of the hour. We got a bunch of people watching right now. For those of you that are here with us right now live, please do hit that like button for Jack and I. Subscribe to the channel, and down below in the description of this video are all the links that you need to follow and subscribe to Jack Hammer as well. Follow him on Twitter, subscribe on YouTube, and bookmark that Press Democrat page as well. There was a great read about Trey Lance with a comment about leadership in there. I found that to be a very compelling article that you wrote there, Jack. Another one of these topics of very critical matchups for the 49ers against Seattle has to be stopping the run. I mean, you had Rashad Penny running for a good clip against Denver, and now it appears that Seattle may be regaining some health in the running back room as well, with the rookie potentially able to play. At least that's what my fantasy football app is telling me. The 49ers were able to hold Chicago, just 2.7 yards per carry. Was that a stout run defense against Chicago? Do you expect us to have success stopping Seattle, or did that have more to do with the weather? And is run stopping still a concern for this, an unknown, I should say, for this defense without DJ Jones? And I got to show the barbecue sauce.
But I think the defense is going to be fine with if they can continue. I think it was the defense themselves that really caused the Bears problems in the running game. And the only really big run that they had on them, they kind of caught the 49ers in a tough position in terms of defense, where they had their defensive tackles on the outside shade of the guard, so they really opened up the interior. And then they brought the linebackers up like they were going to blitz the middle. So it looks like it's going to be a pressure situation. Those linebackers start to back out. And as they're running away from the line, right, to get to the right spot where they're expecting to drop, the offensive linemen fire out, and it kind of helps them push them out of the way. And other than that, I felt like they did a really good job. So this is going to be a little bit tougher matchup because of the situation with Seattle wanting to run the ball. So it'll be a good one for the 49ers. I think they'll be okay.
I am hopeful. That is admittedly the one aspect of this defense that I was a little bit unsure about coming in. I thought that our linebacking core would be stout enough to contain the run. After week one, I remain optimistic, but still a little bit unsure. Gold-Blooded comes in with this comment before we get to those last couple of topics in key matchups. Says, Rob and Hammer, do you think we will ever see our wide receivers can outmuscle or get up for one-on-one balls? I see the top-tier quarterbacks throwing and giving their wide receivers a chance to get the ball, not in San Francisco. To me, when I think of guys capable of going up and getting a football, Brandon Ayuk has a great catch radius. I don't know in a 50-50 situation if I'm counting on him to snatch the ball from a defender. Juwan Jennings strikes me as someone who I trust in a 50-50 ball type of situation. What's your gut instinct on the 49ers wide receivers' ability to come down with it? And do you anticipate we'll see more of these as the season goes on with a bigger armed quarterback?
I think that the 49ers top three receivers can all go and do that. We've seen examples of it. We've seen Deebo Samuel do it. Maybe not on a deep ball going up the middle, but we've seen him take balls away from defenders. A number of times he saved Jimmy Garoppolo last year on routes across the middle where safety looked like they were going to pick it off, and he'd step in front of him and catch it. Or, Brian Ayuk going up and catching balls over Charvarius Ward during training camp this year, and we saw you go and take a ball away from Arizona Cardinal defender in week 4 when Trey Lance threw it to him. We even saw Deebo Samuel go up and take one away, actually, to think, and I think about it in that Arizona game as well. So, and Juwan Jennings has the size as well. The 49ers have the players to do it. They have a quarterback that's going to give them the opportunities. So I think you're going to see that happen. Not with regularity, but you're going to see it happen this year.
See, Jack, this is where you are leaps and bounds above me. Your ability to recall specific plays while my toasted short-term memory sits there fried to a crisp. It can't happen here, but I can rely on your memory like a steel trap it is. I'm always amazed, especially when we go back to reliving some of the memories you and I saw when we were much younger in life, 30-some years ago. Kind of crazy to talk about that. All right, so a couple of these last matchups that are going to be out there on the field Sunday. The 49ers' new secondary versus DK Metcalf and Lockett. First up, Metcalf versus Ward. What are your thoughts? Who do you think ends up getting the upper hand in this one? I would anticipate they are mano-a-mano for a lot of this game.
Yeah, that's going to be a really fun matchup to watch. I think Ward, it's going to be a test for him, but I think he matches up better with in that situation than any of the cornerbacks the 49ers have put up against in that situation in the last couple of years.
It is. I mean, it's wild to me, the way in which DK Metcalf came out, the doubts that surrounded his abilities coming into the league and his ability to just prove those doubters wrong. I wanted to doubt him because he went to the Seahawks. I wanted him to be trash. He is not. It is going to be a fantastic test for Mooney Ward. Looking forward to it. I expect DK Metcalf to get his a little bit. You can't. Great wide receiver, you're probably not going to lock him down. Even Deion Sanders didn't do that all the time, right? In the great matchups between Jerry Rice and Deion Sanders, it was body blow, body blow, body blow. And that's what I would hope to see in this one. Obviously, hoping for the edge to go to Charvarius Ward. There's varying opinions amongst 49er faithful. You heard says he's going to be frustrated. Fable says he's overrated. And Tony says, but nobody can cover him. So he's both overrated and can't be covered. It's that weird duality that exists for DK Metcalf. You heard says, I can cover Metcalf. 49ers, get out there, sign You Heard right now, because he's going to lock down Metcalf this Sunday in the rain. Doesn't care. All right, let's hit the last matchup, Jack, and that's special teams. There has been a significant advantage for Seattle in this one. It's sort of weird to have that big of a special teams advantage in a divisional opponent, but that's been the real deal. Now we have, hopefully, the secret weapon for Seattle, Brian Schneider. He's now traded sides, and he's here for the 49ers added a bunch of players that should provide a better special teams unit. Do you think that the 49ers finally squeak out an edge in special teams? And will it be a close enough game, in your opinion, to where special teams, the third phase of the game, will matter?
I think it's going to be a close game. Special teams always matters to some extent. The 49ers special teams, though, we haven't really seen them. They don't seem to have really improved too much yet. At least I don't, I know it's only 1 week, but based off of the preseason games and what we saw in Chicago with the rain and everything, they don't look like they've really gotten much better in the return game. Their coverage game is about the same too. So I don't know.
Get it past the 25. Damn it.
Yeah, it's almost like, hey, can you just kick the ball in the end zone for us, because we at least want to start the ball at the 25.
Yeah, you really do. And it is annoying in that regard. One thing I will say is I'm with you. I'm still in a wait and see mode about special teams. I believe they have a better core. They should be better. Could be a situation where it takes a little bit of time to gel, and it was an outlier type of a game in Chicago. So I still absolutely have my eye on this, but definitely believe this game could be close enough where that third phase is the difference. Seems like in these division games, they always tend to be just a little bit closer than you want them to be. Let's talk a little bit, not to end on this. We will end on a prediction that goes positive, at least in my freaking case, but a worst case scenario, Jack. What happens if the 49ers lose this weekend? Like, paint a little picture for me, man. How dark does it get? How bad does the national narrative become?
I think this is about as big of a game in week 2 as you can get, because a loss by the 49ers here puts them 2.5 games behind Seattle, 2 games into the season.
Woof.
So this is a big one for them, especially with a divisional team and all that kind of stuff. Now, where's Seattle going to go throughout the season? You don't know, but you don't want to be 2.5 games behind anybody in your division 2 weeks into the season. So they need to come out here, and I think this is a big one. If you lose this game, it's big in terms of your own thing, and then in terms of the national media. If Trey Lance goes out and plays the way that he played on Sunday again, if he's 13-28 with a pick and no touchdowns, and it's not a downpour, what we saw after week 1 is child's play compared to what it'll be in week 2.
Just going to get blown up. Yeah, Goat, I'm with you here. 0-2. Oh my God, I can't imagine. Nor can I. Nor do I even really want to project what it will become. I'm in lockstep with you, Jack, that this feels as close to a must-win game as you get early on in the season. You never want to say that game 2, week 2, right. But the national takes would be absurd. You have the opportunity. Jack just laid out what happens in that loss. The win propels you into, a tie for first place with at least the tiebreaker against Seattle, having just beaten them in the head-to-head. So it's a huge momentum builder or momentum killer. Not that the Niners have momentum coming out of Chicago. Would it be fair to say, if that did happen, that it would kind of be a time to panic as a fan? Or would you say, no, just 2 weeks in, plenty of time to right the ship. It's unfortunate, but no need to panic. Where do you fall on the panic meter?
In an effort to be consistent, I would say you push the panic meter full on if you're 0-2. Because you remember, we talked about this when we were doing our throughout the offseason when we talked about our predictions for the team. This is a team that can start 6-0 their easiest portion of their schedule is the beginning of the season. Well, they've already lost one of them. I said if the 49ers aren't 4-2 after 6 weeks, then it's you need to be worried. If they lose this week and they're 0-2, I have a hard time seeing them win the next 4. So yeah, I think this is one of those games where if they lose this one, you start to panic a little bit about how the season's going to go.
Yeah, it is. Panic feels like a strong word to me, but reassessing where this season is headed does not feel extreme if you fall down 0-2, given the way in which this schedule breaks out. And Thomas, I want to say, if we go down this dark road of 0-2, I feel for you. Thomas Luttrell says, all y'all are lucky. My wife is a Seahawks fan. I'll never hear the end of it if the 49ers lose. Thomas, just for your sanity, just for your sake, I hope the 49ers pull this one out. And Jack and I right now, right here, are going to make our predictions on this game. I will say, I got to give you props for agreeing to that marriage there. I'm out in the world of dating right now. When I see a Seahawks picture, That's it. That's a hard pass. Like that's a situation I cannot throw myself into. Thomas, I commend you for that. You are a bigger man than I am. She's probably a wonderful woman and offsets that Seahawks fandom, and you were able to look past it. Again, makes you a bigger man than I, Thomas. All right, Jack. So we are into that time. It's the end of the show. Again, if you're still watching, smash the like button. Go down there. Get ready to go subscribe to Jack's channel as well. Bookmark that page over at the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. You can read up on Jack's prediction this weekend before we get into the game, along with that fantastic Trey Lance article I was talking about. What do you believe happens this Sunday, Jack?
I have this one going down as the 49ers coming out on top. I think it's going to be 23 49ers, 17 for Seattle. That's my schedule. My prediction.
I like it. 23-17. So the 49ers do not cover the spread in that instance. It is a closer game. I always tend to believe that these division games end up that way, but I'm going to make a bolder prediction in believing that the 49ers are coming out fired up for this one, that Seattle isn't who they said they were on national TV, having beat Denver. And I'm going to take the 49ers beating the Seahawks 24-10, a big time 14-point victory for the Niners, covering the spread and not erasing doubts, but at least taking us away from that worst case scenario. JG1 says San Francisco 23-13. Peter Lee 26-10. Even more optimistic than I am, maybe with a safety on top of my score there. Fable 20-17. We got John saying, you think Trey would make it rain on a Seahawks fan, though? I had to bring that in there. I didn't realize the direction it was going to go, and it was too late not to say the rest of it when I put it out there. John B. with a better tweet for that says 28-10 49ers, and Darren 28-3 gold-blooded. 27-10 says I'm only off by 3 on my prediction. Quesadilla Thrilla 23-21, and Samuel 30-10. Shane 41-6. Let's just leave that one up there for the last, Jack. 41-6 is the way in which it goes. I hope that Shane is correct on either way. Jack, always a pleasure to have you in here. Allen 24-14, the greatest 49 28-24. The Gabe Stiver Show 43-40. I'm loving the predictions. Jack, you have a program coming up. We're going to let you go. Do you want to tell the people about your next program?
Actually, I don't have another program. That one, my guest bailed out, so I'm okay. No,
Jack is good. We can bring up Raphael 5629er's prediction here of 24-16, and Pete coming in 21-13 with Fable saying, hey, if we get that 41-6, I'm going to be ecstatic. So will Jack and I. If on Monday on Jack's channel, we are talking about a 49ers victory of 41-6, I'll be dancing. That's my bold prediction right there. I'll be dancing on this side of the screen. Better than what you just saw. That was a shimmy. What you're going to see is a dance. Jack, I'm looking forward to our show on Monday. I'm hoping that it is breaking down a victory, my friend.
Absolutely. It should be, and I hope it's 41-6. If it's 41-6, that means I can get my writing done a little bit earlier because it should be over with early and I can actually get out of the stadium before 7:30.
Yes, let's get Jack home at a reasonable point in time. I absolutely love the predictions. Still rolling in. Kevin from across the pond, 24-17. Manly Shavers, 28-13. Eric Dane, 27-16. A lot of predictions for victory. I think we are going to be able to hold that line. 49ers play the Seahawks at Levi's Stadium on Sunday. Can't wait for it. Looking forward to a victory. First one of the year. As always, Jack, an absolute pleasure having you here. I will be going live before the game, and we'll also have a post-game breakdown. Jack is going to have much of the same. Look for that article that comes out after the game, breaking it down, because Jack is going to give it to you straight. Thanks again for being on, Jack.
No problem. Thanks for having me. It's always fun.
And to all of you out there, stay positive. Don't go crazy. Don't overreact. Unless something does happen Sunday, then we'll all overreact together. Until then, cheers, faithful.